Most people have used a zip file before to back up some important files or send large files across the internet. Linux provides two different commands when working with zip files: zip and unzip. Let's look at the man page for zip first to get an idea of how to create a zip file. As you can see from the synopsis, we specify the name of the zip file first and then provide a list of all the files. Let's try an example. We have now created a zip file containing files 1, 2, and 3. We can use the unzip command to verify this. The following command will list the contents of the zip file without actually extracting anything. As we can see, the zip file contains files 1, 2, and 3. Now, let's try and create a zip file that contains the files in a directory. The directories dir1 and dir2 have a number of files we want added to a zip file. The zip file contains entries for the directories, but none of the files in those directories are in the zip file. If we want to actually include the files in the subdirectories, we need to use the R option to tell zip to recurse into those directories and save those contents to the zip file. As you can see, the zip file contains the contents of the directories. Zip files actually perform two different functions. First, they provide the ability to archive a number of files into a single file. Second, they compress the files so the archive hopefully takes up less space than the files themselves. Sometimes you may want to accomplish those two tasks separately. For example, you may want to choose a different compression algorithm or not use one at all. To accomplish this, there are a number of other commands we can use. First, the tar command will create an archive file composed of multiple files and directories. It is short for tape archive and was originally created for use with tape drives. It doesn't attempt to compress the files, it just puts them together in one file. Before we attempt to use tar, we first need to look at the man page since there are a number of options. We won't discuss all of them here, rather we will look at the most commonly used options. The C option is used for creating an archive. We will want to send the archive to a file, so we will also need to use the F option. We can use the T option to test or list the contents of a tar file to check that we created one properly. Lastly, although not shown here, we can use the V option to increase the verbosity of the output so we know what is happening. Now that we have an idea of what options to use, let's create an archive of some files and directories. Note that I used the wildcards we discussed in a previous video, so I didn't have to type out all the file and directory names. Also, note that we didn't have to add a dash in front of the options. The dash is optional for some commands. Let's confirm everything was added to the archive by using the T option. We can extract all the contents using the X option. We will test it in a different directory so we don't overwrite the original files. We can see that all the files, even the ones in the subdirectories, were included in the tar file. We're going to delete them and then do another example. Remember that the tar command just creates an archive. It doesn't compress the archive file. If we want to compress it, we can choose what compression algorithm we want. The two most common are gzip and bzip2, with gzip being the most used. In fact, the gzip compression algorithm is often used to compress web content that is sent to a browser. The commands for each compression algorithm are basically the same, so we will just look at gzip in this video and leave bzip2 for you to explore by yourself. To compress a file, in this case our tar file, we simply use the gzip command. Note that the command added a .gz extension to the file. Also, the compressed file size is much smaller than the original tar file. When we are ready to decompress the file, we can use the following command. Notice that it only decompressed the file. It didn't extract the contents of the archive. If you know you're going to compress the tar file when you create it, use the Z option in tar and it will compress the file using the gzip algorithm. Note, however, that you need to specify the .gz extension in the file name manually. Tar and gzip are more commonly used in Linux than zip files, so you need to be comfortable using both, especially when downloading tools or files.